Do you have like a top 3 or top 5 tips for other educators in STEM fields for making their content more accessible?
I really think universal design for learning has a lot to be said for it. I have Emily's book here, all my favorite books. Emily's book, this one is Equity by Design, Delivering on the Power and Promise of UDL, which is universal design for learning. I would really suggest that people consider that because it's providing options for how students take in content. You know, some students love videos. Some students really just want to read. I'm the person that skipped the video version of it. I just want to read it. Although yours are awfully entertaining. I like your videos.
I try to make them entertaining so they're more accessible. So
exactly. Right. Exactly. So give people, and this is not just students, this is anybody, give people options on how they take in content and then also how they respond if they have to do an assignment or something. Is there a real reason why they can't give you a video? Do they have to give you a paper? Because there are students who have mobility issues, like typing out a paper is really hard. Even using voice dictation can be really hard for students. It's not as easy as it might seem. Create your content so that they can use like Immersive Reader to read it to them. I tell my colleagues that they should use Immersive Reader to read my emails because I'm going to tell you the story behind the data, right? I'm going to give you the person behind that. So it's going to be longer than your one-liner, but use
I'm
those
the same
tools.
way. I write novels for emails.
Yeah, there are definitely tools out there. It's just becoming aware of them. Microsoft has some challenges, but at the same time, they have a lot of things available.
Yeah, and even just raising the awareness of learning about what actually exists out there, that would help even, me as an educator. Like, I would love to know, if a student can use this, then I can shape my content. I love that. So give learners, including not just students, but also faculty and staff, because we're lifelong learners.
Right.
Learners multiple options to absorb the information and then also feed it back to help them kind of full circle process what they're learning. We're talking about that a lot in the medical education space because, I'm working with instructors for like the medical school, the residency, we're talking about orientations and like faculty and staff training. And, I think people are sick of just dry lectures and, sitting there passively. It's not very engaging and
right.
lose people's attentions very quickly. So I like that educators are trying to be more creative, making the content more accessible and sticky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a book, Make Learning Stick. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I almost want to start a book club on my channel or something, or maybe even just make a video on like, these are like my favorite books for educators who want to make learning.
This was one of our book club books. So it's great that you had Emily on your channel. This was the Engineering for Professionals. This was our first book club book. And I just love this book because I actually learned so much about myself from this book, as well as learning about disabilities. And our faculty really liked it too. So I think
that's fantastic. Yeah, happy to put in another plug for Emily. I was so honored to have her on my channel. Like, just trying not to get starstruck, interacting.
I know, it's so exciting. Actually, it's interesting, your work on educating medical professionals about people with disabilities. I find that really fascinating because of my student who has the same there. So what are you working on in that area?
Oh, so many things. So over the last year, because I've only been faculty at Hopkins for a little over a year now, I started as that young chipper faculty, lots of energy, hey, what are we doing to teach medical students about disability? Turns out not too much. Some stuff. So I started with just kind of building my network and connecting with disabled faculty and staff and advocates. And a lot of good work has been done way before I got here. There's a Disability Health Equity Research Network and a Disability Research Center at Hopkins. That's headed up by Dr. Bonnie Sweenor. I'm not sure if you know of her. She's been a very strong advocate at Hopkins for many years. She's faced a lot of frustration, a lot of barriers, but she was a very strong advocate, and a lot of students with disabilities found mentorship with her and found community. And so I just decided to bring everybody together. So we formed the Disability Medicine Advisory Board, which is a group of disabled and allied students and faculty. And we basically decided to look through the medical school curriculum and see, what existing content is there regarding disability inclusion, disability medicine, and what opportunities are there to kind of build upon existing content. So far, it's there's been a lot of progress made in terms of healthcare disparities when it comes to race, gender, sexuality, which is awesome. But disabilities kind of gets left at the bottom of the list often.
Right.
So, it starts with like piece by piece. So, building your network, sometimes it's just like, oh, hey, can I give a talk to like this small fellowship group or this one department? And then building that reputation, I've been able to interface more with like instructors and clerkship directors and deans, not trying to overhaul the whole curriculum, but just creating more and more opportunities to include disability and the disabled patient experience, which is, it's like essentially every patient could have a disability or will one day experience a disability. Every person will.
Right.
But trying to ground these efforts with that mindset of like, this is important for everybody.
And I think that really applies to what we're doing too, because faculty can be nervous that, they don't know what to say, they don't know exactly what to do, or if they get an accommodation request or get students in their class or whatever. And it's like creating an inclusive and welcoming environment, one student at a time, one faculty member at a time, who learns a little bit more, is more inclusive for students. It's like, overhauling everything. It can feel really challenging, like accessible math. It's really challenging. We're working on it, but.
And I assume as the levels of math get more complex, the alt text and audio descriptions get more complex. Like, of course, more basic addition, the stuff that I'm pretty good at still, like that is more straightforward. But then once you get into fractions and like square roots and limits and
starting to think about how all the things that we don't say and just how to actually describe math accurately. Unfortunately, I can spot bad calculus a mile away. So if the symbols are not displaying accurately, I can spot that, but not everybody can. And so it's hard to see, like, is it visually correct? Is it auditorily correct? Are we saying it? Because a screen reader doesn't use inflection. So what you might think is, you can't tell, like, is this x plus 3 over 2? Is it x plus 3 over 2, or is it x plus 3 over 2? It's hard to tell. It's ambiguous.
Right. If people are interested in your accessible math programming, will it be accessible like via webinar or recording?
Hopefully we're working on putting together a workshop that we'll share across Hopkins when we get that ready to roll out. And then we do record and we do keep that posted on our Whiting website as well. So we do plan to cross promote that when it's ready soon.
I would love to plug that also. And if you wanted to do like a little simplified version, like a top 5 takeaways for teaching accessible math, like I would love to figure that out with you on
yeah,
YouTube.
Definitely. Yeah, I would love to do a little like math series on your
absolutely
videos.
That would be fantastic. I would learn so much. So I'd really look forward to that. Are there any sort of concluding thoughts or takeaways or things you wanted to share in your introduction to the channel?
Accessibility matters to me because it's the personal stories behind it. It's my own story of having been like in engineering and education as a person with a disability, and I was given the opportunity to be in a STEM field and really love it. And now I get to use both my engineering and my education background to help faculty create more inclusive courses, which is just a real blessing. But I think we all play a part in helping the future students feel comfortable in STEM fields. Like, please don't put students down if they're really good at math, or, it's okay if you want to say, I was never good at math, but like, think about who you're talking to, because maybe it's okay maybe that student needs somebody to give them permission to enjoy STEM fields and needs someone to be their advocate in actually getting into those fields. And students, your teachers don't hate you. Your students don't think you're horrible at math. We just don't have all the answers. I wish we had a perfect way to teach it, but we don't. I really love Jo Boaler's website, U Cubed, YOU Cubed, where she talks about a lot of these issues and like helps students to see that your math ability does not define you as a person. I just think that's really important. That one of my headmaster used to say, he was talking about ADHD at the time, but he said there's a cure for ADHD, and everybody perked up and he said, graduation. It's like, that's so true. I've always laughed about that. It's so true.
Yeah, and advocating for students, even at that early age before they graduate, I mean, you're taking care of students who may not know they have a diagnosis. Maybe they have a learning
Yes.
disability that hasn't been found, but it's only when they're in more to the grad level situations where that pressure, that extra higher level education challenges them to maybe reach out and need those accommodations.
Definitely. I've worked with students because I work as a tutor sometimes too. I've worked with college students who didn't know, or they maybe knew in school that they had learning struggles, but they really had no idea why. And they didn't get diagnosed until they reached out to Student Disability Services as a grad student, or adults who don't realize that they had a learning difference until maybe their child ends up with a learning difference, or get somebody like me who says, oh wow, you're a faculty member, you're so good in this field because it's because you are a dyslexic thinker. That's a strength in this field. And then it's like, oh, never thought about that before.
If we're truly including every perspective or providing opportunities for lots of different people, that's how we can push fields forward and truly innovate, because that's where new ideas come from, is when people who weren't at the table before are finally able to contribute. Yeah.
And sometimes it's not that people are necessarily purposely excluding others, but they've just never seen someone who doesn't look like them in the field and never really just thought about the fact that we don't have diverse representation.
All the more important that we have more and more educators like you who are willing to share their story and put themselves out there and say, hey, I can be a role model. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you for chatting with me. And I'm excited to debut you on the channel.
Thanks for having me. I love it.
Absolutely. I think you're our first educator faculty member. Hopefully first of many.
Absolutely. And I'm thankful for all the students who let me amplify their voices that don't necessarily get heard.
If you enjoyed this conversations and want to hear more conversations like this, hit that like button and subscribe to This Ability Clinic for more accessible and educational content. As always, thank you for watching, listening, and learning. Till next time. There's such a shortage in this workforce. So we have this whole healthcare industry, but just a severe lack of people who can provide those services. So we're not meeting the need right now. And it's actually quite terrifying to think about. But yeah.
I understand that because my niece had cerebral palsy. And so she had a caregiver